the Daily Journal. I'm the Ole Miss beat writer. This is a new project we've been doing here at the Daily Journal, a little SEC live broadcast talk. I'm joined by Logan Lowery, our MSU writer, and new today, sports editor John Pitts. I'm going to give it to him now. He's our moderator. John, take it away.
Well, it's the first time, I think, that anyone has suggested that I'm a moderate in any way. So this is a high water mark. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. That's probably not the right term, but we'll stick with that for now. It is heading into the third week of college football by my count, and unfortunately a lot of the discussion in the last couple of days has been away from the field. First, the death on Sunday night of Mississippi State broadcaster Jack Crystal, and then today on the Thursday, somewhat unexpectedly, the death of Stan Sandroni from the Ole Miss broadcast team. And Parrish, I think I'd like to start with you. This is a tough story. These are tough stories to get our arms around. These are things that are away from the playing field, but they influence the view of fans and things that really touch the hearts of fans. And I know these are both fellows you've dealt with, and kind of throw it to you and let you reflect a bit, and then we'll let Logan weigh in as well.
You know what? Of course, we looked at, we knew Jack's health issues. We knew this was coming for Jack probably sooner rather than later. It was very unexpected for Stan. You know, radio and college sports, John, I think the older you are, the more you appreciate the radio era. And I think people of all ages, you know, have some connection to their broadcast teams, but, you know, specifically those who grew up in the era when all games were not on television. And even with the television era, you know, there's still the idea of the Ole Miss broadcast team and the MSU broadcast team, where different broadcasters would have different styles, but using the terms us and we, you know, that's where it's acceptable. And that's where that connection comes in with those schools' fans, each with their own broadcast team. Obviously, you know, Jack was at it for a long time, but so was Stan Sandroni, more than 40 years. And, you know, both of them were just really well-known and respected in the industry and appreciated and loved by their fans, as evidenced by an outpouring today on Twitter for Stan Sandroni and then through the week for Jack.
Logan, I'll let you pick up and share a little bit of your reflections on this topic.
Yeah, you know, anytime you hear about a death and you end up having to write about it, it's tough. I mean, it's not why Parrish and I or anybody really gets into this business is to, you know, we love the writing ability of games, just being able to go to games and write those topics. And you know, occasionally, you know, we have to write about this stuff, and it's not why we get into this. And you know, when you have a personal relationship with the person that did die, you know, it makes that writing even tougher. You know, I tried to take as much time as I could this week to really do a good job, you know, with writing about Jack Crystal. He's somebody that I've gotten to know over the last 10 years or so since I started covering Mississippi State, and you know, just kind of a personal story about Jack Crystal. My very first college football game was the 2004 Egg Bowl up in Oxford, and yeah, I was nervous as I could be, you know, going to cover it. And you know, I got up to the press box level there at Vaught-Hemingway Stadium, and the door just swings open, and it's Jack Crystal there opening up the door. I don't think he was necessarily opening up for me, but he was opening up the door, and I walked in. So it was kind of a cool moment for me, you know, just growing up listening to Jack on the radio, and you know, just having that little moment. You know, we had several little moments throughout my time there at Mississippi State, but a lot of those I can't share on this little broadcast with you. But you know, it's a tough week, and you know, we'll go to I'll have the memorial service tonight. I'll be there for that, and there'll probably be a pretty touching moments and a lot of stories shared. I know a lot of the writers and I just, you know, we've shared our Jack Crystal stories this week.
I have a feeling he was headed out to get a smoke probably when he opened the door for you. But yeah, I'm with you. I think some of the better You know, a guy came in the Journal office on Monday who had played high school football at Tupelo, and he just wanted to share a little bit. He wanted to talk about the experience of having, knowing that Jack had called the games that he played in, and that his grandparents who were in failing health were home and able to hear the games. And the guy, God bless him, he was just moved to tears, you know, by the memory of that, and that just speaks to the powerful emotional connection I think that fans have with their voices. You know, growing up in Tennessee, John Ward was the voice of the Tennessee Volunteers, and I know in later years listening to Eli Gold say on the Alabama Network, which can be heard here in the Northeast Mississippi on the radio as well. It is a time for some reflection this week. It is the third week of the college football season, though, and I'd like to ask both of you the question, what have we learned about your respective teams at this point through a couple of games, and what is yet to be determined? I have to say in the preseason, I wondered about the difference between these teams, kind of looked at them on paper and thought there were a lot of similarities. After a couple of weeks, my impression, Ole Miss is a significantly better team at the moment than Mississippi State is. Maybe a touchdown better on a neutral field, but it's a long season before we get to the battle for the golden egg. Logan, I'll throw it to you first. What have we learned about Mississippi State, and what are we yet to learn?
Well, I think it's a whole lot tougher to learn about Mississippi State just because they haven't really played anybody. I mean, Southern Miss was such a pushover game for Mississippi State, 49-0 shutout, and then UAB really didn't know a whole lot in that game. Mississippi State talked to Jeff Collins earlier this week, the defensive coordinator at Mississippi State, and they were so focused on stopping UAB's running game, which they did, that they just eliminated all, you know, the passing game altogether, put their cornerbacks out there on an island, and, you know, UAB took some shots and hit every one of them. They had 3 touchdowns of over 75 yards or more, and that's where they gained a lot of their yardage was just on those 3 plays. And, you know, I don't know if it's just the fact that Mississippi State's secondary is bad. I really don't know that that's the case. But I do know that, you know, I thought their defense was pretty good going into that game, but also, you know, you saw some vulnerabilities in that game. But, you know, offensively, Mississippi State's had some hiccups, and, you know, you've been able to see that, especially with all the rotating quarterback. But at the same time, they're averaging 533 yards a game and 48 points. So, you know, even in all that, they're still putting up some huge numbers and still really haven't hit their stride just yet. So, you know, I really don't know what to make of it. In this game against South Alabama this week, I don't know if we're going to learn a whole lot more about Mississippi State. I really don't think we'll be able to kind of put them on a measuring stick until they go to Baton Rouge in a couple of weeks.
All I know about South Alabama is that there was a guy came from there and you don't want to mess with him. I think that was a Jim Croce song, it seems like to me.
He was a country boy.
That seems to be the limit of my knowledge about that. I know where that is, at least. So, but yes, I wonder what we're going to make of them after this. But as fans know, the SEC time comes, and that will be the acid test. And we shall see about that. Parrish, over to you. I have to say that one thing that I want to see a good team take care of business against a bad team, and that's what we saw, I thought, when Ole Miss sunk the battleship up there in LP Field on Saturday. Vanderbilt right now is just terrible. They're playing terribly. They're probably not playing up to the quality of the roster that they have, but Ole Miss didn't fiddle around, didn't let them hang around. What do you feel like you've learned through 2 weeks of watching Ole Miss play?
Well, I'll start with saying, John, if I have my lyrics right, I think that was a pool shooting boy named Willie McCoy.
Could well be. Could well be.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. What I've learned about Ole Miss. One, I've learned that Bo Wallace is a pretty good quarterback, but still just pretty good. Now he's put some distance between himself and those 3 interceptions in the first half of the Boise game, but he's going to have to do more of that. He's going to have to play another turnover-free game this week, and he's going to have to string some of those together, get a big, long string of pass attempts without an interception going, I think, before people really build some confidence that Bo Wallace has truly improved in taking care of the football. Look, when he's not throwing it away, he's completing 72% of his passes through 2 games, okay? He's got 5 touchdown passes, and honestly, maybe he has 1 or 2 more if he doesn't make some more controlled decisions against Vanderbilt and throw the ball away. I'm interested to see exactly how much growth there is for Bo Wallace. Terrible start in the first half against Boise, but really 6 good quarters since then. So Bo Wallace is pretty good. They need him to be better, and the jury's still out on that. We've also learned that this is pretty good defense, okay? We heard about that in camp. We know that last year's heralded freshmen are now sophomores, thinking specifically here of Robert Kimdichie. He is the leader on that defensive line, and he's played like it. I mean, he doesn't just make tackles along the line of scrimmage. We've seen him, make tackles wide and make tackles downfield. I think you're going to see his measurables come more and more. 1 sack right now, but I think you're going to see more tackles for loss. The big thing he does right now is he commands attention and he gets in the backfield. This is a pretty good defense up front with him, and also in the back with that secondary playing well. Cody Core stepping up at receiver. But I'm thinking, I got my Codys confused there. In the secondary, we're talking about Cody Pruitt, okay? Getting some good play in the secondary, and they've been able to withstand the loss of T. Shepard, at corner. So he never really even got a game for him. That's a guy that was going to help out, so that, we're seeing their depth.
Do you feel like, does this look like an Ole Miss team that's capable of running with force? In other words, we talk a lot about Bo Wallace, but at some point in some situations, it's going to be necessary for this team to succeed and assert their will by being able to run the football and grind the other team down some. Have you seen much that suggests that they're going to be capable of doing that against the quality SEC opponent?
I have not seen anything yet that suggests they are better in between the tackles running, short yardage football, that this is still going to be a challenge for this team. I think as the season goes on, I think there is the chance that they will improve there, because we're seeing more play now from Jordan Wilkins at running back, Mark Dotson at running back. These are a little bit bigger backs, a little bit harder running backs, and I think they have the chance to improve as a short yardage offense, but have not really seen a lot of that yet.
I will start with you, Parrish, and then kick it back over to Logan. Is there anything about this weekend's game that concerns you? Last weekend, the question I had is Vanderbilt really that bad? Can Ole Miss take care of business? Is UAB really improved? Can MSU stay focused? We got answers to those questions. Is there anything about this weekend's games that concern either one of you? Parrish, I'll start with you on that.
Yeah, I think people who have watched college football in recent years know about the success for Louisiana Lafayette under Louisville, Mississippi native Mark Hudspeth, the former MSU assistant. They've got some good athletes there. I think the thing that really is concerning about this opponent at this time is the embarrassment factor. I mean, they were handled 48-20 at home by Louisiana Tech. They feel like they're a much better team than that. They turned the ball over 3 times. They gave up some big plays. I think Ole Miss has more athletes and more depth. I think Lafayette's propensity to give up big plays, maybe that was an isolated incident, but I would think that Ole Miss has a chance to do some things on offense. I think Lafayette could look better offensively against Ole Miss than either of its first 2 opponents, but the Rebels will hit some big plays also. If they fit their gaps on defense, and I think they will, that's been the most consistent side of the ball for them, I think they'll win the game. I mean, I've got them winning like 37-15, but I think Lafayette will get some things done.
Logan, what do you expect to see when you see the USA in your Chevrolet down there in Mobile?
Well, it's been about 10 years since I've been to Mobile, so I'm going to go exploring a little bit while I'm down there this weekend. But, you know, we talked earlier about Mississippi State's deficiencies containing, you know, big passing plays. I mean, they gave up 435 yards through the air to UAB last week. You look at South Alabama's receivers, and they got 3 transfers from the University of Alabama playing receiver. So there's some talent there. They've got some talent on the edge there, and you know, I think we'll get a true test sort of Mississippi State's cornerbacks. You know, was last week just kind of a fluke and, you know, they were able to hit some big plays, or does Mississippi State genuinely have some problems back there in its secondary? I think we'll be able to answer that question. And another thing I'm looking for is I'd like to see somebody kick a field goal this week. I mean, they've attempted one this year, and it was missed terribly. And I saw 2 back-to-back extra points missed last week, and another one that clanked off the upright. I've never seen, in college football, I've never seen 2 extra points missed back-to-back, you know, with my own 2 eyes in a game. And, you know, it's just a, you know, I knew the field goal kicking was bad, but I thought they could at least make some extra points. But even that's not becoming automatic now, and it's kind of just becoming a joke at this point.
Well, Starkville High School has at least 1 and maybe 2 real good kickers. I think Mullen and them need to go wrap their arms around those kids and put a fence around Starkville, try to keep them home if they can. Let's talk about the SEC a little bit. We'll start with the West, I think, and you know, we're all trying to figure out what to make of Texas A&M in particular, but I guess the way I would frame it for the purpose of this question, do the early performances by Texas A&M give you pause as you think about how the West race will work and whether basically Auburn and Alabama and Texas A&M are having a sort of a 3-man race, a 3-person meet to determine who the West champion will be, and where does LSU then fit into it? I think Texas A&M right now playing like the best team in the league, and that's how I've been voting in the little voting that we do for our Saturday game day section. But how do you all see that? Parrish, I guess I'll start with you on this. How do you see the West playing out right now?
I tell you what, Texas A&M obviously was impressive in week 1, and then week 2 was that week where you didn't learn anything in week 2, you know, because
nobody got hurt. That's about it. Nobody really.
Right. So we're really making a lot of evaluations still off of week 1. I saw several plays in the first half. I was in the Georgia Dome press box getting ready for Ole Miss in Boise, so I watched a little bit of Texas A&M South Carolina. Here, what I came away with was that maybe the MVP the last couple of years has been Kevin Sumlin and not Johnny Manziel. Okay, because Kenny Hill, look, he had an intense camp competition with the true freshman to win the job. No doubt he's talented, but I think the MVP there right now is Kevin Sumlin, and also that offensive line. The plays that I saw against South Carolina, and again, I didn't get to see the whole game. Look, nobody was getting close to him. He had lots of time to stand back there. He was not pressured. So I think it was a great performance by Kenny Hill in the opener. I think a lot of credit should go to that offensive line, and I think the jury is still out on Texas A&M's defense. So we'll just have to wait and see. But a very impressive start for so many people that wanted to drop the Aggies in their preseason rankings. You know, they're right back in the mix, I think.
Right, understood. And just to follow through then, where do you think Alabama, Auburn, LSU, where do they all sort of fit in the matrix of things? Who do you think will be in Atlanta?
Well, you don't take Alabama and LSU out of the mix because they both have a history of winning consistently. You know, Alabama more so recently, you know, Les Miles and LSU had the hiccup there, in 2008, I think. All right. But so you don't take them out of the mix. But all of a sudden, the West just looks it looks like a lot of different people could win it. It might be Alabama or LSU at the end. You know, I don't think Alabama's defense. I know there's a lot of concerns about their secondary right now. They're not going to be bad. It's not going to be a bad defense, okay? And I have more confidence in their defense than I do Texas A&M's. All right, Alabama's going to settle on a quarterback, or they will settle on a situation that they believe is best for them. So they're still going to be a good football team. I don't think they're going to be as dominant as they've been. LSU, you know, they've got some issues at quarterback too, and I just didn't see enough of their game against Wisconsin to really have a feel for where they are. Right, I think any of those teams that you've mentioned there, Alabama, LSU, Auburn, Texas A&M, and right now, I would throw Ole Miss into the mix as well because I like how they improved from week 1 to week 2, and if they continue to do that, I mean, week 2 for them was all about inward focus against an overmatched opponent, and they played clean, crisp, proficient on both sides of the ball. To me, that's coaching and preparation. If they can continue to do that, I think they'll have a shot. The West is kind of readjusting itself this year.
Logan, I think you may hold Auburn in higher esteem, perhaps, and we didn't talk much about Auburn right there. What's your take on the West, and how does Auburn fit into the mix, and where does Texas A&M fit into the mix?
Well, I think Auburn and Texas A&M have a lot of similarities in the fact that they both lost a lot of key pieces from last year, but have recruited really, really well. And I think it's going to take a little bit longer for those two teams to kind of emerge themselves in the SEC as far as, I guess, getting into the echelon of an Alabama or an LSU. But I think they have the talent to get there, and I think they'll improve as the season goes. I really expected Texas A&M to take a little while because they were relying on a lot of freshmen to go out there and a lot of unproven players to go out there, and you didn't really know what their quarterback situation was. Many people thought that the true freshman was going to win that job. But Kenny Hill goes out to South Carolina and really makes a statement in week 1. But looking at Auburn, there's some talent coming back from that team that went to the national championship game last year. Some key components of that team are back in some key places. So I think Auburn's going to have a little bit to say about the race as well. But, I'm kind of like Parrish. I think any of those 4 teams could make it to Atlanta. And, I guess you would say Ole Miss would be the dark horse to make it to Atlanta. But, Ole Miss is kind of the unproven of those. The other teams have kind of been in this race for the last few years, and the Ole Miss team would be a newcomer to that. So I really think if I had to put money on somebody, I would still go with Alabama because that's kind of been the safe bet over the last few years. They've recruited so well. I mean, they've had like the top recruiting class in like the last 5 years, and when you run one 5-star off and run another 5-star back onto the field, a lot of teams in this league cannot do that, and Alabama is just loaded with them.
And I would add this to what Logan was saying about recruiting, John. Just look at the rankings, the recruiting rankings. And a lot of people they don't get caught up in recruiting stars, and they shouldn't. But I've always been of the opinion that if these recruiting websites if somebody's going to the trouble of making these evaluations and making money off of this business, they're going to be pretty. They're going to be pretty valid. They're going to be close a lot of the time. So those recruiting rankings should not be discounted. And you just look at how Alabama, LSU, Texas A&M, and Auburn have recruited, and I'm thinking specifically of Alabama and LSU right now, just because there's been a lot of attrition and you've seen playmakers leave those programs doesn't mean that there are no playmakers there. I mean, they're there. We just don't know their names yet.
Well, I think it's interesting that an Ole Miss can have a top 10 recruiting class and be like 5th or 4th or 5th in the SEC West in recruiting. I mean, that's how brutal this process is at this point, that it's so difficult to get a tailwind to lift you when you have teams in your own division that are continuing to be as successful as they are within the context of the process that they have. But I'm excited about the possibility of where both these programs can be if they can continue to stay on the track that they're on. and not get impatient. And if everybody stays in terms of coaching staffs, where we might be in 3 or 4 years, what we might be talking about at that point in terms of where those programs are. Let's touch on the East real quick. Logan, we'll start with you on this one. Seems like early on between South Carolina losing and Georgia looking pretty good, that we have some sense about what the East might look like, but we still haven't taken the full measure of Florida because they A, didn't play their first game, and B, then played a game from which you can't take anything. We still haven't really taken the full measure of Tennessee. What are your thoughts on the East at this point?
Well, I think we'll learn a lot this week with Tennessee going to Oklahoma. I think we'll learn exactly. That's a huge measuring stick for them, and I think we'll learn a little bit about Florida because Kentucky has looked good in their first 2 weeks. Granted, they haven't played anybody either, but I think it'll be the toughest test for Florida. So I think we'll learn about those two things. I think the one thing we have learned is Georgia can run the football. I mean, Todd Gurley is a man back there, and probably the favorite right now for me to win the Heisman Trophy. I mean, I just love the way that they pound the football with him. They know what they've got in him, and they're just feeding him the football and letting him run. And they've got a great offensive line back. Everybody's healthy, and that was Georgia's problem last year. Was just they had so many injuries, so many devastating injuries. Kind of like Florida. Florida had a ton of injuries last year as well. They've got some players back. A lot of their players are more unproven than Georgia's, so right now I'd have to give the edge to Georgia.
Parrish, I'll let you take up the torch on the East, and what are your thoughts on that?
I think one of the things we've learned is that we really didn't know much about South Carolina. And again, it's not a big body of work right now, but an embarrassing loss in the opener against Texas A&M, and to me that's about coaching, okay? Because that opening game, you've got a year to prepare for that, okay? And you had it at home, and you weren't competitive, all right? Now, I think East Carolina's a good program, so you get a win there. Look, those South Carolina fans, they haven't forgot that Texas A&M game. Now you've got a Georgia team coming in that runs the ball really well. I'm interested to see how South Carolina competes this week. Looking at the East overall, it's kind of, just from a fan of the SEC perspective, I guess, or just looking at the big picture, it's kind of disappointing to see how fast Vanderbilt has dropped, and how far they've dropped. I mean, they've got about 13 starters back from a team that won 9 games in each of the last 2 years. Now, I think the talent level's not there. It's not what it was. Maybe that was, a motivating factor for James Franklin leaving, but, I tend to think not. I think it's motivation enough to go from Vanderbilt to Penn State. So the talent is different, but I think the drop, at least at this stage of the season, has been too far. I think the talent level was noticeably different. Stephen Rivers was 6 for 25 passing. Now, there were some throws he made where Ole Miss was in position, but really didn't guard the play as well as they could have. Jordan Matthews would have made more catches last year. Vanderbilt had more talent at that position last year, but the drop has really been alarming.
I'll swing it around real quick. We just got a couple of minutes left. I'll let each one of you quickly give me a surprise team nationally or regionally that's sort of caught your eye. I'm going to start and say watch out for Memphis. I can't believe I'm saying that, but Memphis went out to UCLA. That's a tough trip, and played them real hard. And they can build confidence from that. This could be a signal that Memphis is kind of gotten out of its own way and is a program that's starting to swing back up again, just in time for Ole Miss to have them back on the schedule, I might add. So, Parrish, you got a surprise team or somebody that's caught your eye you'd like to throw out there?
Well, John, one of the things I hate in a group press conference is when you get 3 guys at the table and the one guy answers a question and the other 2 said, I got to echo what my man said. But I'm going to have to echo what my man said here. And it was Memphis, and I knew you were going that way, but I'm going to give you Memphis as my surprise team too, because look, this was a team that could do nothing for a couple of years, nothing. And all of a sudden, you know, again, they have an opener with Austin Peay, one of those games where you really don't learn a lot, but when you score 63 points like they did, it tells me that you are executing your offense and that you're doing the things that you want to do and that you are in control. And when you travel to the West Coast against a top 10 team that maybe is a bit overrated, okay, I think maybe that game said as much about UCLA as it did about Memphis. But again, Memphis goes down their offense. They execute. I think they're going to be a tough out for Ole Miss in a couple of weeks. Not somebody that the Rebels can just look past. You know, as I looked at these first 4 Ole Miss games, and now we look at it through the idea that College Game Day could actually be in Oxford for the Alabama game on October 4th. What has to happen is both Alabama and Ole Miss have to be undefeated. You know, looking at Ole Miss's first 4 games, I would not have thought that the most trouble would have come from Lafayette and Memphis. But that's possible if the Rebels do not prepare themselves and focus and execute in the way they did against Vanderbilt.
Logan, we'll let you have the last word on this. Who you got as a surprise team?
I'm actually going to keep it in the conference, and I've been impressed with what Kentucky's been able to do. Granted, like I said earlier, I don't know who they've really played that really you can gauge them from, but you're just looking at the talent they got on the team. You know, that first wave of offense and defense have been impressive. I've been impressed with the way Coach Stoops has been able to recruit up there. I just don't know that they've got that SEC depth, and that's what I'm waiting to see. And I think we'll find out a little bit about that this weekend when they play Florida. But that first group of Kentucky Wildcats that they throw out on the field is really competitive. And I thought Mississippi State, I thought that game was going to be a pushover this year going up to Lexington, and I don't think it is anymore. I think Kentucky is going to play them tooth and nail, and Mississippi State's going to have to grind it out if they want to win that game.
And that's a Kentucky program that had to start a wide receiver at quarterback in the last game of the season against Tennessee just a couple of years ago because they were just so decimated in terms of where they were with their talent level. But he has come in and he's made a hit in recruiting. And there's no reason they can't get back to where they were with Rich Brooks, where they're at least winning a couple of league games here and there and getting into some bowl games again and having a little run. Fellas, we've basically hit our time limit for today. This was fun. Let's try to do it again soon.